Sex Talk.
Hello, and welcome back to the Sex Talk. My name is Moushumi Ghose. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in sex therapy. And today on the show, I have with me Devin Green. Devin Green is a licensed therapist, but recently I have learned that she also specializes in psychedelic assisted therapy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So hello, Devin.
Hello, I'm glad to be on the Sex Talk. There's no better place to have this conversation than in this space. So thank you for having me. As you just stated, my name is Devin Green. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor specializing in both sex therapy and psychedelic assisted therapy. Also a PhD candidate for consciousness psychology, all things woo-woo. So I'm really excited to dive into this topic today and intersecting the two fields.
Yeah, so I know Devin. I know you through Los Angeles sex therapy. We met because you were doing sex therapy initially, and I know that you do a lot of work with sex workers, and I know that that's one of your specialties. And then more recently, I just learned that you do psychedelic assisted therapy. So I would love to learn. I guess I would want to learn how you got interested in the psychedelic side of that, because I kind of know the sex work stuff and the sex therapy stuff, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about the psychedelic work.
Yeah, good question. It's honestly, I've always been drawn to alternative ways to heal, kind of being trained academically through the traditional therapeutic model that's kind of structured and not a lot of room for improvising and, more modern ways of healing. I quickly learned that that wasn't my thing. So luckily I found you and fell in love with sex therapy, but that led me to wonder, okay, what other ways can we heal through non-traditional ways? And, through personal and professional experience with the world of psychedelics, whether that be through actual medicine journeys and ceremonies, or just non-ordinary states of consciousness through yoga, or just living a spiritual lifestyle. It led me to taking MAPS, which is a multidisciplinary psychedelic organization. And it was like redoing my whole therapeutic training in a way that was more humanistic. It was heavily Carl Jung geared. So it really just spoke to me and it was in alignment with me. So that led me to completely rewire my practice and get more serious about this, and came in a good time because now ketamine is now legal. Ketamine assisted therapy is now legal in Oregon, and every other state is trying to follow suit too. So lucky to be in timing of everything kind of going on and wanting to apply it to my practice.
Yeah, I love that. I think that some of the way that the psychotherapy field operates is so antiquated. It's very limited. It doesn't take into consideration a lot of diverse and non-normative lifestyles and races, and it's not very diverse. And so I've always felt the same way. And I always grew up, with this drugs and things were always around, like altered states. And I found them on my own and found them to be extremely healing for the world that I existed in. It was like a way of survival for me, and yeah, a lot of times we would go overboard and staying out all night and things like that. But a lot of times it really, so many like different substances brought such a reprieve. And I'm not talking like about alcohol or anything like that, just like experiences that I had. So it's really wonderful now that so many people are questioning, this like the traditional ways of doing therapy. So I love that. I love that you took the leap and like are getting involved in all of that. So ketamine from what I understand, is legal in California too, is it not?
Oh, I do believe so. I need to stay, I'm all over the place with my states, so I need to,
Okay.
but I
Because I
know,
know of a gal that does ketamine assisted therapy, and she's a California licensed therapist.
yeah, they have actually, you're right, a lot of ketamine, almost more than Starbucks. They're popping up everywhere in California, like the clinics. So I know
Right.
that psychiatrists can for sure prescribe it, but as far as the therapy component, they may still be working out some things, but it doesn't make sense to do the medicine without the therapist. So hope,
Right. And I'm wondering if the psychiatrist has to be a California based, or maybe the psychiatrists are based in Oregon. I don't really know, but I definitely know that um, for mushrooms and some of the other, like psilocybin, that it's based in Oregon. Give me,
yeah.
hold on, Devin. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I didn't realize it. I said not to worry about it. Oh, thank you. All right, I can edit that out. My partner just brought me
Sure.
some food. They said I was hungry, and then I said, "I'm no, don't worry about it." Um, okay, so psychedelic assisted therapy. I know there's different forms of psychedelic assisted therapy. Um, Tell us what's currently legal and where and what you do, I guess.
Mhm.
And then maybe we'll talk about after that where the field is going.
Yes. So interesting enough, ketamine assisted therapy is now legal. And now that I'm thinking about it, even when I worked for certain organizations, the psychiatrists were all over the state. So I think for the most part, looking into it, your state most likely can be prescribed the medicine, but maybe virtually having to connect with a therapist who's legally able to assist with the integration and preparation of that. So that's what it tends to look like. You either, like I'm partnered with a clinic called Field Trip, and I'll send you there if you're wanting a more in-person experience with, psychiatrists and nurse on site to check the blood pressure and your vitals to make sure that you're having an okay journey. And then you integrate with me virtually after, or that you could just get the medicine, which a lot of people tend to do. What I don't advise for, first timers, they get it shipped right to their home and they do the medicine individually. And I see them after as well. You also have trip sitters. I don't offer this service, but just for people to know, who literally sit for you for like the 8 hours while you journey. And ketamine is a bit shorter, like 2 hour trip, but they'll sit with you and integrate on demand, which can be super powerful. But I understand that some people don't have the finances or energy to even, be that vulnerable with someone on first glance. So those are the kind of the ways to do it. Or of course, ceremonies. I'm thinking of doing some retreats out of the country where it is legal. Yeah, so whatever you're comfortable with, I'm sure there's an offering for that.
Right. So you don't actually sit with them. You do, is it called psychedelic assisted therapy? Is that
Yeah,
the
well, integration. So integrating
integration? That's the word.
experience. Yeah, and looking out for, okay, what themes did you have? How was your trip? How was your journey?
Right.
Anything that you want to process, because more often than not, there's a lot to process. And we
How
do
much
this.
comes up?
Oh man, some people have experiences with deities and gods and,
Totally.
ancestors.
Visions and feelings that have been buried for a really long time. Like, and they
Literally the inner child, just
so many, yeah.
it leaves me speechless every time what people come up with,
That's
honestly.
so cool. So you work with them before the actual trip and then after the actual trip.
Yeah, so there's preparation before and integration after. Preparation is just very detailed intention setting, like what very specific people,
Yes.
oh, I just want to heal. I want to like, no. In what way do you want to heal? If you're going to meet your inner child, because you might, what do you want to say to them? So being very specific, that probably is longer than the integration, just an hour of, what to expect. And then the safety part. And then of course, psychologically and consciously, where do you think we're going to go? If it does turn into a bad trip, I say that because I don't believe in bad trips, just trips that you maybe weren't expecting. Um,
Oh, I like that. I like that way of looking at it. It's true because it also depends on your state of mind, what's buried, where you are right now, I guess, what you're dealing with will sort of dictate how your trip is.
Yeah, so just really trying to prep them to have a successful trip, and most importantly, getting realistic with expectations. Like some people come, this is my last resort, I've tried everything. It's really hard to place that demand on not only yourself, but the medicine too. You may still not might feel nothing. Integration starts not when you take the medicine, but the moment you decide to come and get help for yourself. So it's an ongoing journey beyond your session and journey.
I love that. So you do the pre, and is it just one session usually, or do people have more than one session?
I usually do one prep if it's pretty straightforward or if they've dabbled in this realm before, but people who are maybe more nervous and have a lot of questions and maybe have never, I usually get a lot of actually older folks who are wanting to try and they have a lot of concerns. So I may do one or two with them just to make them feel more comfortable, but typically one. And then
Okay.
integration is different though. I might do two or three of those just to unpack.
Okay. And then do people usually do it again, or is it a one and done thing? What do you find is most common?
I recommend at least 3 sessions. So 3 prep and integrate, prep and integrate, prep and integrate, because that's what the studies and the science have shown has led to long-term results.
Mhm.
But again, I know people probably can't afford or have the access, or, some people have to take a whole day of work off just to unpack, and some people may not have that luxury. So it can be done in one, but I would suggest at least 3. Like if for
Okay.
me, if you're gonna see me, it has to be 3. Like I'm not comfortable with just doing one.
Yeah, one and done is probably not going to get that much out of it. I think that I like this idea that there's an intention in like an intention setting process and what are we working on, and like so that the client knows and is sort of leaning into that, and maybe even prepared during their journey, like with a journal or a tape recorder or something. Tape recorder, I'm dating myself, but some sort of like audio or video recorder so they can refer back to it or something like that. I don't know if that sounds crazy, but
No, I
I
would
would do
suggest
that.
journaling, dancing, art. A lot of art, interesting art pieces come from people who even claim they're not creative. A lot of stuff can manifest in that. So yeah,
Love
definitely
that.
to reinforce, and journaling is one of the,
Yeah.
higher on the list to do.
Yeah, and we're kind of talking, I guess we didn't like identify the actual psychedelic. Now, are we just referring to ketamine, or is this psilocybin as well, MDMA? I know all of those are sort of like coming down the pipeline slowly. Psilocybin, I think, is legal here in Oregon.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think Colorado, they decriminalized it too.
right,
Yeah.
right. So will you do that with any of those with your clients, or do you specifically focus on one type of trip?
I specifically focus on ketamine because that's what's in my scope of practice and
Gotcha.
what I'm comfortable with. But as far as couples go, there's actually clinical trials now to approve MDMA assisted couples therapy because there's a lot of trauma within couples, both individually and as a collective. So as soon as that gets passed, I'm wanting to do that too. I do have experience in working people with psilocybin as well, but that gets kind of tricky again, depending on the state. But as of right now, ketamine is kind of the focus because I have the psychiatrist I'm directly working with and it's legal. So it's easier for me and protecting me. But if a client does, again, want to individually and they making their own choice to engage in another one that isn't the ketamine or the psilocybin, then
Right.
I would work with that too. But
Right.
we,
If they made the trip out to Oregon themselves and
yeah,
did the trip themselves, you can still work with them. Um,
yeah.
you
And
just
also,
can't refer them to that clinic.
yeah, and also keeping in mind that it's not just substances, breath work can take you to non-ordinary states.
Mhm.
Yoga, tantra, sex, things that alter your being in any way are welcome and wanting to process that. So a lot of somatic work too can be integrated into this.
I love it. So let's talk about now you've got these two passions that you're sort of melding and creating your own special kind of therapy where you're doing sex therapy as well as psychedelic integration. Tell me about that, like your version of that or your vision of that.
So my vision is to have just this merging of the two. I've noticed that both in individuals and in couples, there's a shadow self. So how we identify, as far as couples go in the relationship and the relationship in itself, how we want to be viewed in it. So psychedelics is really good at unveiling, those little aspects of ourselves in the relationship that need to come to the light. And typically when you do that, relationship, whether monogamous or non-monogamous, dealing with a partner or multiple, all of that can be dealt with safely. I think there's so many defense mechanisms that go up with my experience of working in couples and being in relationships myself, that a lot of the work can't be done, and the bulk of couples therapy is kind of getting those defense mechanisms to come down so that we could do the work successfully. And they're saying
Love
now,
that. I think that would be so amazing. I've often thought, "Ooh, how cool would it be to do like an MDMA retreat for couples, and yeah, just because I think that like, in that space with a guide,
Mhm.
they can kind of they would be able to uncover, but we'd have to leave the state. Like we'd even have to leave the country to do it. Like it couldn't do that in the United States yet.
Not yet, but the trials are literally going on now. So hopefully pretty soon that gets approved, because in DMA, it's a heart opener. It builds compassion and empathy. And, I've used it lives ago in a party since, and I felt those things. So
Yeah.
imagine, like you're saying, with the guide and then as container and
Yeah.
with intention, how powerful that could be.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
For sure, I definitely feel that intention piece. Just like even setting the intention, if you're not going to work with a therapist, I feel like can be probably very powerful. So I love that. So couples, and then what about like with individuals?
So individual, I get, especially when it comes to, as far as sex therapy goes, a lot of individuals come in with guilt, shame,
Yeah.
so much layers of trauma around sex that people don't realize how damaging that is to our identity, our expression, our liberation and freedom through sexuality. So I'm really curious of folks who are struggling with gender identity issues, are just coming to terms with their own sexuality, with the use of psychedelics, how that can just completely alleviate those symptoms. Something in the psychedelic world they call the inner healer. We all have that within us. And something about the medicine triggers that and kind of rids us of all the conditioning and the narratives and the trauma that's attached to who we are and how we want to express and be seen by the world. So I'm really excited and interested to see, just specifically for folks within the LGBTQIA community, how that can help.
Yeah.
Transform.
Yeah, I grew up in the sort of like the gay community in San Francisco, and like drug use was rampant. And I think that one of the things that, how I was saying, like kind of saved our lives in a sense, because of there's, just like back in the day when same-sex marriage wasn't even legal. I mean, we were talking about a community that, of course, struggled coming out of the AIDS crisis in the 80s, and then like this period between the AIDS crisis and same-sex marriage getting legal. There was this like profound like sexual liberation, but coupled with there's no rights for LGBTQ community. And so drugs were really important, but you would experience like drugs, this like elation and discovery of yourself, but then the drugs wear off and you sort of revert back to
Yeah.
you can carry it with you maybe for like a month or two, this like newfound sense of self.
Yeah.
And then once that wears off, you got to do it again or something like that. But I feel like with this process, and then you could, maybe it doesn't, you can do the 3 series and then maybe repeat it again in a couple years or something like that.
And yeah, with this process, it's the doses vary. very minimum. So, there's no dependency being built or that sense of, oh, it's wearing off and now I'm back to, it's supposed to be a seamless integration where it's not much difference. The only thing is the neuroplasticity, educating clients around what's really going on in the rewiring of your brain so that they could have the autonomy to know what's happening within themselves, which is a bigger commitment than just a night out and we're having fun and then we're back to baseline.
For
Like, no,
sure.
it's
Yeah.
happening in my mind. This is what I have the power to do while I'm in this state of neuroplasticity. I'm big on educating, we're not just having fun. This is what's happening. This is what you should do with this moment in time if you want effective change and if you're serious about transforming.
Yeah. And I think, to that point, I think that knowing that this is something that is allowed, I guess, can shift people's minds around, I'm just doing this thing to have fun and escape. Like, this is actually helping me, and people are doing this professionally, I think is profound. You mentioned the dose. And that was something that I keep seeing, like microdosing and, like I hear about, because I live in Oregon most of the time right now. And like a lot of people sell like tinctures of mushroom tinctures. In fact, I was just in Los Angeles and this woman was selling mushroom tinctures. So, and I'm told that it's a microdose, and they say to use it like every day. So, and that's like you do it on your own. But it sounds like what you're saying is also you're doing somewhat, is that something like a microdose?
Yeah, a microdose might be even smaller than that.
Okay.
But I've had experience, I want to say like 5 to 10 milligrams. Nothing above 20 I've worked with. There are people who've tried the IV route and of course have a stronger tolerance. So the psychiatrist may up it a bit. For the most part, for oral, the ketamine at least, it was a very small dose.
Okay.
But yeah, microdosing is a whole separate thing that I still need to educate myself on. But I would imagine it's the same, except microdose, like you said, is more independent and you're doing it like as a daily damage control for yourself without any assistance.
Right. An article just came out, I want to say in the Washington Post, about and it was geared towards mothers.
Oh, mama.
Yeah, it was geared towards microdosing and dealing with anxiety. And I actually know people that do it. I mean, here in Oregon, it's pretty commonplace. You can buy little like tinctures of like you can like of CBD and THC in California and Oregon and places where, marijuana is legal. You can also here buy mushroom tinctures in Oregon, and people use that to like help with their anxiety, help with depression, things like that. So I'm super excited for all of these shifts and changes coming. So I guess this is my last question. And if there's anything else that that you feel like you haven't shared that's important, I feel like I'm totally new to this like genre and world, and I'm gonna start learning with that course that you shared with me. Eventually I hope to start learning myself and spending more time. But where do you see this going? Are we going towards like legalization, or is it going to be more like regulation for medical use, like they did with marijuana, I guess?
On one hand, I'm really proud to see that treatment is evolving with humanity. Not everybody can be described as traditional talk therapy anymore. So now with the wellness kick and everybody, being intentional about their mental, physical, psychological health, I feel that, society is now making things more acceptable so that it can keep up with humanity. The downside of that is a lot of companies as already are, the pharmaceutical companies are really making bank from this. And of course, capitalism had to get involved. So kind of a good bad news.
Capitalism had to get involved, right?
You never have anything, right? So the good news, they're legalizing in a way because they want to make a profit out of this thing. So it can be more accessible to people who can afford that. But the bad news is that like it may not be affordable for people who are in need. And of course, speaking to the taking this from indigenous groups, psilocybin, cacao, things like that are being ripped from, religions and traditions that have been doing this for years. So there's always a dark side to it that I just always make sure to make point of. But it's happening, and they're trying to take it and make it a
Right.
pharmaceutical.
Well, the pharmaceutical companies definitely are for profit
Yep.
in our
Yeah.
country, unfortunately. And it's, if they can, I would imagine they would try to make a profit up on it. So yeah, that's an interesting, it's already hard to get because it's black market, and then they legalize it, but they put an expensive price tag on it. It's still hard to get, right?
Yeah, kind of with the, cannabis boom, it was illegal, and then now you see little cannabis shops everywhere.
Right.
So there's always a dark side of it, but at least with that, it comes with more legality and safety
And
and
education. Yeah.
yeah, and practitioners don't have to, oh, my license. Like, no, this is legal, at least with ketamine, and you can do so safely and administer really I hate to call it a miracle drug, but the facts, the science is saying what somebody can do in like 20 sessions of traditional talk therapy. With ketamine assisted therapy, they're doing in like 3 or 5 sessions.
I love it. I love it. So Devin, anything else that you want to share?
No, just inviting, whether you're curious or terrified or have been doing this for years or have never even thought about it, I would invite you to at least give it a go. Especially if other treatment modalities haven't really been in alignment with you and your progress. Yeah. Thanks for
Can
having
you just kind of tell everybody what's the price tag on something like this? Like say someone wanted to come and work with you. What are they looking at, ballpark?
So with me, I'm more realistic. So for the 3-session deal that we talked about will be $500 for me, but then to speak with my psychiatrist to get the medicine is $200. So $700 total for the whole 3-session package and having the medicine with that. Now, if you look externally with organizations like Field Trip and Mind Bloom and those bigger corporations, you're looking at least 2,000 range for those 3 sessions.
So that's a deal. So they get 3 sessions with you, and then they have to get the medication and the consult with the psychiatrist, and then they do the trip on their own.
Yes.
And that's like about $700.
Yeah.
And what's the time frame? Ballpark?
So it will be at least 3 months. So we'll do the session and you'll have a few weeks to integrate after that. And then we'll do another session a few weeks after that. So about 3 months. And I'm remembering too, some insurance companies do support the ketamine assisted therapy. So definitely ask about that to get the medicine piece covered at least.
Oh, right. Or you can get a super bill or something like that. So it might even potentially be less than 700 because you might get some of that medication covered, right?
Exactly.
That's a bargain. Everybody, Devin Green, the people's psychedelic sex therapist.
Yeah, I want to be accessible, and I'm such a believer in this work that I don't want people to let that be a factor to hinder them from trying, especially again, when out of the country with Indigenous folks, this is part of the community, it's free to the community. So I'm trying to keep that as much as possible, but still, need to get some finances from it. But
yeah, of course. I mean, you're not a charity. And what you do, the work that you do is so powerful and helps so many people. So I think it's profound. And I think it's a really great deal. So why don't you tell us where people can find you?
Sure. I'm on Instagram at Devin Deshae, DevinDshae. That's my website, devindeshae.com. And of course, on the lovely Los Angeles Sex Therapy website, you can find me directly or communicate with our lovely coordinator, Abigail.
Yep. Yeah, I'll put all of the links down in the comments and the captions. Devin, thank you so much. This was so illuminating. You are if I was to do this journey, you would be the person I would do it with. And I might be like, Devin, will you be my, I don't know if you know.
I'm here for it. And I also sent an article to link as well,
Okay,
giving some
perfect.
science behind all this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Devin. It's
Thank
so
you.
wonderful to connect with you today.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye. And that was the Sex Talk.
Yay! I don't know scared to do that this whole time.
Wait, let me stop recording.
Okay.
The Sex Talk.
The Sex Talk.